I'm going to record this because I told a couple people I would. The conversation over the past year has centered so strongly around protecting ourselves from the virus, and it just, it's valid, of course. It is necessary, but it just feels so like like a victim mode, right? Like, are we just talking about, protecting ourselves with a mask, or are we also talking about the things that we can do to build up our immune system? And quite frankly, some people, have more ability to build up their immune system than others, right? And so there's always a spectrum of like, what are we personally doing? And we're not going to all look to like have the same finish line, right? Like an 82-year-old with underlying health issues is never going to have the same finish line as a 32-year-old healthy individual. And so it's like, what can we do to build up our immune system so that when the next round comes, because not to be Debbie Downer, but there are viruses all the time. And there's nothing to say that, this was the worst pandemic that we've seen since, early 1900s. But we've been a little bit, I hate to say spoiled, but we've been a little bit spoiled in not encountering something like this in our lifetime. And so I have just always felt like, we always have to be building our resilience, both emotionally and physically, to be in a situation where I can roll with the punches. I can enjoy my life and fulfill my purpose um and say that, you know what, I'm doing the best I can thriving within a crappy situation, right? And also knowing that life is not, I mean, it's not meant to be like all unicorns and rainbows. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I, when I talk to people who are struggling, one thing is the struggle, right? But then oftentimes the bigger picture is how much we like judge ourselves for the struggle. So if we're having a hard time, like we're feeling anxious, arguably, if we just let ourselves feel anxious for a minute and said, "Oh, that's weird. I'm feeling anxious." Like it passes. Emotions pass. But then we're like, "Oh my gosh, why am I feeling anxious? I shouldn't be feeling anxious. What if this happens? What if that happens?" And we start judging ourselves or arguing against ourselves or start thinking that things should be different than they are. And that creates a struggle that's like 10 times the original struggle. So it's like, how can we, navigate life without throwing fuel to the fire of our problems? And at the same time, be saying, like, how can I get better? How can I be, it's kind of, I don't know, meta, I guess, but I always think about like, how can I could be completely content with my life no matter what's going on, at the same time knowing that I should constantly be improving and growing and exploring new things, right? And I think a lot of people get a little like off in that. They think, oh, unless everything's perfect, then I can't feel content, and newsflash, like nothing's ever perfect. So are you going to withhold a sense of contentment from your life forever until you think, you're just constantly striving for more money or a new job or a better girlfriend or better this? And it's like, no, that's not going to happen. So all that to say that, I think the things that I'm talking with people the most about these days are, yes, viruses and bacteria and cholesterol and all of that stuff, but it's really the like health behind that and the happiness behind that. And it's become so obvious in the last year that I think, even though the traditional medical like establishment does the best that they can, and our culture has kind of a certain view of health, varied, but certain standards of health, the people we don't take a deep enough dive into, are we healthy? You know, people essentially, we go by how we feel and a couple numbers on a paper, like some, some metrics of some cholesterol and some blood sugar and stuff. And what we're seeing, especially with coronavirus, is that people that can look pretty good on paper or feel like they're looking good on paper are still not like handling this particular virus the best. And so it's really made me think, like, are we giving people enough information about their health, to know, like, am I really healthy? And every case, and so then the take home message has been, for some people, like, oh my goodness, this virus is completely unpredictable. It's, so and so was super healthy and they ended up in the ICU. And then so and so is 90 years old and, has this, and this, and did great with it. And, to some degree, there's always some outliers, some unpredictability of a virus. But in my view, when I like dig deep, I've never encountered like a course of a patient that I couldn't have told you, like, oh no, that's why this person was more susceptible. And so then it's kind of like, so why isn't that obvious? Like, why isn't that the conversation? Why aren't we talking enough about obesity, for example, as a health risk factor, like an inflammation primer versus, how we look in an Instagram post? But I will not get started on that. And why aren't we talking about, like, oh, that young, healthy doctor who has no health problems, who was in the ICU and passed, but they also had worked 36 hours straight, hadn't slept well, hadn't eaten well, and their dose of the virus was like, their initial inoculation, as we call it, was like a gallon compared to someone else's little drop in the bucket. So obviously their immune system is going to have one disadvantage, and then given a strong, dose of the virus. So, and then, there are so many things in between. So, so I think, one, I just wanted to kind of put that out there as, if you haven't had like a good checkup with me, you need to, like, we need to be diving a little deeper into blood work and checking metabolism factors and inflammatory factors that are maybe outside of the standard realm. And we need to be having that conversation about, are we being as healthy as we can be? And are we, looking at kind of I call them the buckets of health that are just as much our mindset, just as much our nutrition, just as much our sleep and exercise and relationships and finances and physical environment, like all of that stuff. Some of the stuff, our culture might say is a little woo woo, but I can connect it. We can tell you about the enzymes and all of that it's activating. Like all of that translates to physical health. So, so that, we can do at a one-on-one visit. And then really what people have been asking for is something a little more, with a little more touch points and a little more coaching and a little more like, okay, how do I really feel better? And a lot of times, with good reason, probably if I had to pick, like I put in the email, I feel like I'm a specialist in the state of feeling stressed, tired, overwhelmed, overweight, and older than you should. Like everyone can like relate to something in that syndrome, that is something's going on in there, right? And so, but probably if we're, if we had to, prioritize one of them, what people ask me the most about is, how do I lose weight? How do I'm carrying the quarantine 15, or I, want to, finally get out of pre-diabetic range, and how do I lose the weight? And so, I am, well, I have the process that have walked people through on a one-on-one basis, and I think there's just so many people that need that process, like the support of a group. What I want to do is get together a group of you all who are willing to say, you know what, let me spend 6 weeks trying to better my health and trying to look inward on all my buckets, all my nutrition, activity, whatever, and pick one to work on. Because I'm a big picture person, sometimes by a fault. I see more commonality than I see differences. I, see like the big picture of health, and can see things that are out of alignment. Um, and sometimes that works for good, and sometimes it's annoying because I can argue any side of a coin right around into a full circle, and then you're right back where you started from. But it's good to be able to see different perspectives. But all that to say, like, what I've found is, quite frankly, people come to me looking for, like, what should I do? What should I do? Like, should I eat a certain way? Should I start this workout? Should I start meditating? Should I, leave my husband? Like, what should I do? And what I found is that is, what to do. Like, everybody knows what to do. But, and my process, honestly, is just helping you pick where to start, and giving, yes, I have the expertise to say, well, this is going to give you maybe the most bang for your buck if you don't ignore this. But it doesn't matter what you start with, because once you pick up momentum with whatever you do, um, then that momentum spreads to other parts of your health, and others parts of your habits, and other parts of your life. So this the process that I walk people through is kind of like, to me, it's like a choose your own adventure. It's like, okay, where are we going to start? Let's dive in, and it's super fun. So I think I'll send out, more information about this kind of little test group that I want to get together. But I think that's the main principle, is like, how can we enjoy life more, feel healthier and stronger in a way that doesn't feel like torture, that doesn't isn't going to like disrupt my whole life. We just kind of make small little layered changes, and that's what builds up to some big health benefits. I need to come up with a different analogy, but what I refer to it as quite frequently is the scalloped potatoes of medicine. Like, like scalloped potatoes, like they're so yummy, right? With the really thin layers. So you just build them on up, and it's so yummy. So I'll maybe come up with a healthier analogy. But there is room in life for scalloped potatoes too. So, Erica, I know I think we've probably chatted, about this, and your work with acupuncture is so in alignment with some of these principles, that it's, the body doesn't, we, human nature says we want to look for like the big magic wand, but the body does not enjoy being bullied in any way. It just enjoys like a little bit of tweaking, and then that's what kind of tunes things up. So
Yeah, I think everything that you're saying really kind of holds true to a lot of my patients that I've seen. A majority of them, even if they say I'm coming in for shoulder pain, once I talk to them a little bit, it's some combination of anxiety, depression, and sleep issues that are really their biggest problem. And a lot of it is just stress. And I think a lot of people right now are having a hard time finding like a safe place to just kind of let it out.
yeah.
So I've had a few patients that have come in, they're nearly in tears. They just had a bad day at work. And, the first thing I say is, you're safe here. Let it out. If you need to cry, cry. I am with you, and we can spend this time doing whatever you want. And um, those people that actually have been like willing to just like, I gotta just cry, have become like weekly
Yeah.
patients. So I think to some degree, I mean, I do have a master's degree in counseling, but I think just um, being at that safe space that they can go at least once a week and they can like have a safe space to talk. And what you're offering here, I feel like this is a safe space for your patients to come and ask questions that they might think this is a stupid question, but I really am confused about this. And
Mhm.
so I think, people are searching for a place they can feel okay to feel how they feel.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And also it reminds me like, some people might be thinking like, hey, I'm fine. Like I'm not sad, or I'm not holding everything in, or I don't have like turmoil in my life. And there's a whole other, group of us that might say that, and we actually believe that and think that, but our physiology feels something different, you know? Like we think we're have it all together, and that's great. Like we feel like we're coping well, but then it's actually harder to make the connection of like stresses in our lives to physically how we're feeling. But the connections are there because when we're in go, go, go mode, or we think like, oh, I'm just a worrier, it's no big deal. Like that takes a toll, you know? And so, oftentimes it's kind of like, we may feel the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg may be shoulder pain, or the tip of the iceberg may be trouble losing weight, or the tip of the iceberg might be just feeling more tired than you think you should. And then, my job is to say like, okay, let's like let's like spread the waters, get all that iceberg out, and then we're going to figure out, where to start, because there's something in there that is kind of like the um the bowling pin that knocks over some other bowling pins, but and that's where we start. And the other thing I think that a program like this is, um the reason it's super fun is a lot of us feel like there's just like a few ways to feel better. And I don't really want to do those things, right? Like I don't want to have to work out all this time, and I don't want to have to like be vegan and all of that. But and certainly a lot of this pandemic has kind of, I don't know, it maybe sound cliche, but it almost makes us feel a little boxed in. Like, oh, I can't the thing I like to do now, I can't do it anymore. And I may sometimes, sound like, Peggy positivity, even too much, but it's like, oh no, like you're looking for this, and there's like 20 ways that we can get you that. Like one of them isn't available, but I will find you 19 other ways that we can get there. And so, um, and so having someone and having a group that can just help you brainstorm, like, okay, what does physical activity look like? Because you're sitting home thinking you're a failure because you have a treadmill in the corner that you are hanging clothes on, but you actually, and our recommendation might be like, well, I would sell that treadmill and buy some cool Nikes, like workout shoes, and do something that you actually like to do. So I think, there are just so many things that stop us. We become creatures of habit, and we have these preconceived notions about what health should look like. But I think there are definitely ways that, from a very traditional medical perspective, we can look under the hood a little bit and kind of unlock some tricks, optimize some things that traditional medicine doesn't look like. So that's kind of the professional side of things. And then from the self-care side of things, there are things that you can do that can be more fun and easier than you think they can be. And then from a community perspective, like, we are we're pack animals, like we're creatures of community, and we're missing that to a great degree. So I'm going to lean on you all to help me create it. So I just wanted to kind of throw that idea out there, and happy to take impressions or questions, but I'll send out more information if you want to be part of my group, and then we'll go from there. Sound like a plan? Awesome. Well, I have a short time today. We're only meeting for a half hour because I double booked myself at 1 o'clock. Um, but it was a pleasure to see all of your all's shining faces, and I'll send out I typically send out the recording in my next email so people can catch up. Cool. Well, have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.